Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series 2023, where we aim to add value to people's lives, happening every Wednesday and Thursday on ebizradio.com. You can chat we chat about everything leadership, coaching, and marketing. And you can catch the Lunchtime Series on all major podcast channels today. And to help us grow the channel, guys, please follow, like, and share. In today's marketing and leadership segment, joining me as per usual, marketing communications expert and co-host Craig Page-Lee. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm great, thank you. Here we are, heading into the last day of the first month of the year, which is just bizarre. Can you believe it?
Yeah, no. The more I think about it, the more I think that whole theory about time doesn't exist is absolutely true. Because it's like flying by.
It is.
So, Craig, as we start today's show, what are the key takeaways from what we can share with the audience from last week?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. So I want to address the points from that second article we covered last week, which you'll recall was titled 8 Strategies for Avoiding Layoffs During Turbulent Times. It was published to Forbes.com and was written by the Forbes Council expert panel consisting of the Young Entrepreneurs Council members and some really great points of view by the respective contributors for the 8 points. And the article provides a number of simple yet highly effective points on how to manage expectations of laying off staff during difficult times. And it was a good segue from the first article we covered. So let's take a quick look again at those points. The first is find ways to create more value. So if organizations dedicate 100% of their focus to delivering true value for their customers, this can absolutely translate into growing the business, staying profitable, and retaining employees. The second point of the article was consider temporary pay cuts or reduced hours. Here, instead of laying off staff, the company can ask employees if they would be willing to reduce their hours or take some kind of temporary pay cut to help the company weather the tough times. The third point was audit your spending in other areas. A very important point here. So if reducing headcount is not possible, companies can often achieve the break even by auditing their spending and making cuts across overspend in other areas of the business, for instance, cutting certain partners or vendors and obtaining some kinds of discounts or reduced rates for project work. The fourth point was focus on cash management. One of the key requirements for any business success is cash management, obviously, and when reserves are in place, layoffs can be avoided to some extent. Therefore, focus on building that reserve account. The fifth point was invest in a cross-training program. Again, another really good point. A well-defined and highly structured cross-training program is a definite way to mitigate layoffs, especially if team members are flexible and can actually work in multiple roles across the organization, shifting staff around when one department or role stagnates. The sixth point was embrace a remote workforce. Having a remote workforce definitely allows the business to reduce those upfront costs by eliminating the need for office space and the associated expenses, as well as the likes of rent, utilities, and equipment, Kevin. And the seventh point is consider all sources of financing. I think it's important for any small business as well. If cash flow is a problem, look for possible sources of financing, the likes of if you get paid by invoice, look at invoice discounting or invoice factoring. These are definitely opportunities to help with cash flow management. And lastly, the eighth point of the article is leverage a mix of contractors and full-time staff. So this approach allows businesses to maintain that core team of employees while leveraging the skills and expertise of specialists of the contractors when needed and letting them go when the business slows down, Kevin. And those are the key takeaways from last week's conversation.
So, Craig, what do we have in place for today's conversation?
Kevin, as mentioned last week, I want to cover the topic of developing a digital mindset for today. And as one would obviously expect, there's a huge amount of content covering this particular topic. Some really great in-depth studies from the likes of McKinsey and Forbes. But I want to set the context firstly on this term digital mindset, because it's quite broad, but at the same time quite specific. So let's have a look at some of the definitions that I came across. So firstly, from Wiki, we find that a mindset is an established set of attitudes which is regarded as typical of a particular group's social or cultural values, the outlook, philosophy, or values of a person, frame of mind, attitude, and disposition. And it may also arise from a person's worldview and philosophy of life. A firmly established mindset could create an incentive to adopt or accept previous behaviors, choices, or tools, sometimes known as cognitive inertia or groupthink, which you're quite familiar with in the work that you do. Within these concepts, it may, however, be difficult to counteract its effects on analysis and decision making. So quite a mouthful from Wiki. Nice, clean, simple definition from More Than Digital blog that I came across. It states that a digital mindset can be defined as personality traits or behavioral dispositions that are not directly observable and significantly structure and channel thinking, feeling and acting in the social and instrumental context of digital transformation. So quite a powerful statement that the expression of personality dispositions does not produce an absolute but probable readiness to behave, which can be moderated by external environmental factors such as framework conditions or new learning experiences. Again, these are concepts that you come across a lot in the leadership coaching practice that you deliver. What we also learned from More Than Digital blog is that there are 6 personality dispositions that are critical to achieving this digital mindset sphere, particularly in a work-related context. And these are defined as openness and agility, proactivity, creative and design motivation, customer centricity, critical faculties, and open-mindedness in dealing with failure, probably one of the most important points there. And finally, we learned from McKinsey.com that digital adoption accelerated during the pandemic has changed business forever. Now organizations face pressure to make consequential business decisions quickly and in business areas that have no previous experience with digital tech. Important. Though many organizations recognize the need to become more digitally data-driven, they often struggle to find, cultivate, and keep the talent and the mindsets needed to do so, Kevin.
Craig, what I find interesting about this is, especially with McKinsey saying this, it's changed forever. I think, part of, if I just look at some of the corporates that I deal with, they do have an IT department, but they don't have a digital innovation department. And I think that's one of the sort of newer areas that people need to consider how they move into, because if it has changed forever, how are we adapting what we do, what the offering is that we offer, and how is it digitally driven or digitally supported? I think, again, comes back to that conversation we've had previously about what types of jobs there are or could be created in the future. And, this is an opportunity for companies to lean into the digital mindset. So I love the fact that, this is a conversation that's prevalent.
Absolutely. And then the counter to that particular point is that, what are those skills that organizations need to enable them to move into this continuum of a digital mindset? And that's why I really like the closing sentence from this McKinsey reference, is that though many organizations recognize the need to become more digital and data driven, they often struggle to find, cultivate, and keep the talent and the mindsets needed to do so.
Yeah, so Craig, you mentioned the 6 personality traits of achieving a digital mindset. Can you elaborate on that for us? Because I think that's a very necessary conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. So a good article that I came across on the More Than Digital blog is a key answer to the question, and was published on 19 August 2022, was written by Julian Knorr, titled "What is a Digital Mindset? 6 Dimensions that Define a Digital Mindset." The article opens with a quote by Nick Zhu, who's the CEO of Inc. Germany, and this was extracted from an interview on the specifics of the topic at that particular point in time. So Nick Zhu notes the following, Kevin: for the digital transformation, a pure focus on new technology and learning of new technological skills, the so-called hard skills, is no longer sufficient, but it is primarily the mindset, the so-called digital mindset, that matters. Nick Zhu also states that it's no longer enough to get up to speed with the latest technology. The way of working and thinking also needs to change, and digitization offers new rules of the game, and opportunities. Those who understand the new environment will obviously win the race, Kevin.
Craig, I mean, I'm all for the digitization, but what I am finding quite prevalent is, or very obvious, is that people want to see people in person currently. Like if I say to you, okay, cool, let's have a meeting, and they go, no, can we do it in person? So as much as we are moving into a digital era and things are moving to a very online kind of approach, there's still a part of the human connection that people really want to retain. So there's a very fine line.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And the digital mindset doesn't mean that we're all in the work from home proposition. There's some really good aspects on how technology and digital enablement just drives business and success differently. And it's picked up in some finite detail, and it goes on to introduce the notion of digital transformation on the basis of the following understanding. A key point here, Kevin. People very often talk not just about mindset, but about digital mindset or digital. This does mean that everyone has to be able, this doesn't mean that people need to be able to know how to program in order to be successful in this transformation, because it's not about that IT department that you referenced earlier, but it's also not about, the work from home proposition. If we use the approximate translation mindset and link with the term digital, we obviously get the combining to create this digital mindset term. But it's not about digital skills, as I say, about programming, language, software, etc., but rather about the characteristics of the personalities in the dimension that are critical for success in this digital transformation. And the 6 points that come about to unpack this is that it's about openness and agility versus persistence. And the digital mindset is a dimension that describes how people behave when confronted with new and unfamiliar digital development opportunities, Kevin. It's about proactivity and entrepreneurial action orientation versus reactivity and situation orientation. The digital mindset dimension describes the extent to which people are motivated to proactively drive the enterprise forward with a view to the overall context of the organization. It's about creativity and design motivation versus process loyalty. And here, the digital mindset dimension describes the extent to which people are able to actually create and initiate meaningful innovations. It's about customer-centeredness versus the task and organization-centeredness. And here, the digital mindset is a dimension that describes the extent to which customers' perspectives are integrated into finding new solutions for the business and obviously to meet their needs. It's about criticism versus harmony orientation. And the digital mindset dimension here describes the extent to which people can actually take a critical look at their own actions and those of others in order to initiate constructive optimization, both from a relationship and business performance point of view. And the last of the 6 points, it's about dealing openly with failure versus avoiding failure. And here the digital mindset dimension describes the extent to which people are prepared to deal with their failure. But what really appeals to me in the closing statement of the article, Kevin, or particularly the section of the report, is that it notes the following. There is no one right digital mindset, but there are different manifestations of the digital mindset, all of which have strength and value and of which are needed to the different degrees in different organizations and roles.
Craig, what I do find interesting is the productivity and entrepreneurial action that it speaks about. And I think as an entrepreneur, one of the things that you need is you need to be able to deal with fear, really in a big way. Fear is part of being able to do that. So as I'm listening to you here, it almost sounds like there's a gap in the market here, and how do we get teams to start looking at becoming digitized and shifting that mindset and helping them shift that mindset, and taking them through some workshops on how to do that more effectively.
And definitely, another leaf in the page of your book, in your leadership coaching development capability, Kevin, most definitely, because it's a perfect segue into the performance of people in this regard.
Craig, your camera is off. I just wanted to mention.
Oh, thanks. Let me see if I can get back there and find out why. Okay. Oh, thanks. Didn't even notice that.
Yes. All right. So, Craig, you mentioned the report by McKinsey as well. What can you share from this report?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. And another really good report. I love the McKinsey work, and it really touches on a very similar approach to the aspects covered in the More Than Digital blog. So quite nice to see a bit of a comparison, but with some quite distinct differences in certain areas. The article is titled, "What are the Pillars of Digital Transformation? The Key to a Successful Digital Transformation." It was published on 29 October 2018. So take note of this, 4.5 years ago, and covers a global survey on how many organizations have actually undertaken efforts to implement effective digital transformation. And the data in the article really emphasizes, what are the key approaches, but also how long this conversation has been in the marketplace, Kevin. Article opens with the following paragraph. As digital technologies dramatically reshape industry after industry, many companies are pursuing large-scale change efforts to capture the benefits of these trends or simply just to keep up with the competitors. What's interesting to note here, Kevin, is that more than 80% of the respondents say that the organizations have undertaken such efforts in the past 5 years, yet successes in these transformations is quite elusive, as only, in fact, less than 30% of organizational transformations succeeded in improving a company's performance against the defined goals. The most important point to note, though, is that only 16% of respondents say that their organization's digital transformations have actually been successful or improved performance or equipped them to sustain changes in the long term. And that's really quite low. But an additional 7% say that performance improved, but that those improvements were not sustained. And that could be, whether the technology readiness was in place or whether they did have that competent skill that they were able to nurture and keep in the organization, Kevin. But I know you like numbers in our respective conversations, so here's a few more for you. Digital transformation does not exceed 26% among the high-tech media and telecom industries, whereas the more traditional industries such as oil, gas, automotive, infrastructure, and pharmaceutical, digital transformations were even more challenging, with success measured only between sort of 4 and 11%. So there's heavy grinding industries are really battling with digital transformation. And these low success rates obviously have signaled a huge cause for concern. And picking up on your comment, maybe there is an opportunity to build some kind of organizational program that enables those heavy grind industries to become more effective at this, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Craig, with that context in place, are you able to expand on the categories mentioned?
Kevin, yes, absolutely. The categories here, as I noted, 21 best practices were covered in the survey, and they were used to get to understand how these organizations drove their digital transformation and which of the categories or best practices were actually identified as enablers in driving this success. And those 21 categories were then broken down into clusters of 5 distinct categories, and those being important pointers of leadership, capability building, empowering workers, upgrading tools, and communication. And so let's have a look at how the categories influence the success and how the businesses adopted different principles across those categories. So the first category that was referenced was leadership, which in the article is actually positioned as having the right digitally savvy leaders in place. What we learned from this category is that change happens across all levels of an organization during digital transformation, with the biggest impact happening in relation to talent and capabilities. We also note that 70% of respondents mentioned that the organization's top teams actually changed during these transformations, Kevin, specifically when the new leaders that were adept with digital technologies joined the management team. Moving to the next category, being capability building, which in the article is positioned as building capabilities for the workforce of the future. We learned that developing talent and skills throughout the organizations is one of the most important factors for successful digital transformation. And interesting, of the 21 key points mentioned, 3 specifically relate to the workforce's digital capabilities. So quick touch on those. The first was defined as individuals' roles and responsibilities so that they align with the transformation goals, importantly, which can help clarify the roles and capabilities that the organization needs. The next relates to engaging the specific roles of integrators, a really nice word here. Integrators and technology innovation managers who actually bridge those potential gaps between the traditional and digital parts of the business. Integrators are employees who translate and integrate the new digital methodologies and process into the existing work way, Kevin. The third point here was about, or category was about empowering workers, which in the article is positioned as empowering people to work in new ways. And the category notes that digital transformation requires a cultural and behavioral change, such as taking calculated risks, increasing collaboration, and customer centricity. The survey advises that there are 2 primary ways in which companies with successful transformation are actually empowering their employees to embrace these changes. The first is through the reinforcement of new behaviors and new ways of working through formal mechanisms. And the second is an approach to empowering workers and ensuring that people in key roles play an integral part in reinforcing change by challenging the old ways of work.
I'm just unmuting myself here. But I mean, the more you're unpacking this, what's interesting about it is, I mean, you kind of go, okay, cool, yeah, we need to change the mindset. But when you unpack it to this degree, you're kind of going, there's a hell of a lot that actually needs to be considered. It's not just a kind of going, yes, we know we have to get onto this digital thing. But unpacking it to this point, like empowering the workers, the leaders taking a whole different approach to how they set their business up, and what changes that needs to happen. There's a hell of a lot that goes into it, and I'm so glad that we're actually unpacking it to this degree, because there's more to it than just saying, let's embrace the future kind of thing. There's a lot to it.
Absolutely, Kevin, and that's why it's so important to see the figures around success versus non-success, because there are multiple layers across every organization that need to be impacted on and fixed to ensure that there's successful transformation into this new digital age. But part and parcel of that is actually perfectly captured in the next point, which is about upgrading tools, which in the article is actually defined as given day-to-day tools to digital upgrade. And here, Kevin, the survey asked respondents about 7 structural changes at the organizational level that they'd actually implemented since the transformation began. And again, 3 of those involved in making use of digital tools as a new organizational norm. So technology embedded across the organization. The first was in adopting digital tools to make information more accessible across the organization. The second is about implementing digital self-serve technologies for employees, business partners, or groups to use. And the third is about focusing on implementing technology across all company operations. For example, modifying standard operating procedures to include these new embedded technologies. But Kevin, moving to the final category, one which is something I speak about a lot in transformation, is that of communication, which in this article is obviously positioned as communicating frequently via traditional and digital methods. So it's not throwing the old out and coming with the new, but it's about working collectively. And as with any change program, clear communication is critical. The same applies during the digital transformation. However, in this instance, it's important to communicate a beautiful change story. And this is the bit that I really like. The change story helps employees understand where the organization is headed, why it's changing, and why these changes are important. And the importance of this approach cannot be emphasized, Kevin, as successful transformations all indicated that they were more than 3 times more likely within an organization that actually follows this practice. So when communicating change stories, successful organizations tend to deliver much richer story than other, Kevin.
So, I mean, Craig, as we close today's show, what are the key takeaway for the listeners on today's conversation? Because you've got me thinking here, and I keep missing my mark to talk to you, like, because I'm kind of wrapping my brain around how this could be used as a really good sort of entry point to have conversations with businesses.
Absolutely, Kevin. You know, again, the McKinsey article, the McKinsey report is really a great read, and I think it'll give you a good entry point into how to formulate some kind of program around these for your clients. So again, picking up on the report, what are the pillars of digital transformation, the key to a successful digital transformation? The survey results suggested 3 simple steps that companies can actually take to increase their chances of success during this particular transformation phase. And these are noted as follow. The first being reimagine your workplace. Success requires both digital attuned leaders and a workspace with the capabilities to make digital transformation happen. And the point here is that companies will need to invest and hire for this radically different skills and capability requirement. Irrespective of where in the journey of transformation organizations are, it's important for all companies to think critically about the ways in which digitization could affect their business and the new skills that they need to keep up, Kevin. Key is to develop a clear workforce strategy to help determine the digital skills and capabilities that they have in place and will need to meet the future goals. The second point is upgrade organizational hardwiring. I like this term. As digital requires a new way of working as well as change to the organization's overall culture, employees must be empowered to work differently and keep up with a faster pace of business. New digital tools, enhanced processes, a much more agile working model are all necessary to support and enable this change. Leaders, however, do have an important role to play in this regard, Kevin, and we all know that not all leaders have the experience to support or implement these kinds of changes, and as such, dedicated leadership development programs really need to be implemented, not just to help the leaders, but actually all employees, thereby making the necessary mindset and behavior shifts and easy transition. And the last point here is, again, the key about communication: change the way you communicate. Good communication is essential for driving effective change across any organization. Companies need to get more creative in the digital context by leveraging the various communication channels they have to promote and enable quicker ways of working, quicker responses, speedier mindset behavior, all part of that digital mindset shift. And moving from one-way instructive communication to more communication dialogue is important here. Using the likes of company-wide emails, for example, create more open feedback, interactive channels and loops of conversation. Use the internal social media platforms as well, and just get dialogue going across the organization. And then a final recommendation for better communication, Kevin, is to develop more targeted and tailored messages across all levels of the organization, whether by department, personnel, role, or function. And that's a wrap for today, Kevin.
I absolutely love that, Craig. It's a fascinating conversation. And one of the things I read yesterday, just to add to what, like, thinking about changing your ways of communication, is someone mentioned, why don't you get someone who's younger than you, or someone who's, really in the digital kind of space, and let them interview you, or you interview them, and to get perspective from a very, very younger kind of demographic, so that you can actually sort of pick their brains, right? Because that's where the future lies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. I love that.
It'd be great to pick up on that.
Great. So thanks for today's show, guys. If you want to check it out, all our shows are always leading from one to the other. And as Craig puts them together. Craig, I'm looking forward to next week. What's up for next week's conversation?
Yeah, Kevin, going to go back to some of the fundamentals of marketing. There are various models that apply from the P's to the C's. So really just have a look at the sort of the coming together, a couple of those. It's beginning of the year, fresh minds, youngsters out there, just, chance to recalibrate and understand some of the drivers of getting product to market and some of the models that can help them be successful in this regard.
Fantastic. Guys, you can catch the Lunchtime series every Thursday where we chat about marketing on ebizradio.com at around 12 o'clock. So join us there live. And Craig, thank you so much for today, and I'll chat to you soon.
Thank you, Kevin. Look forward to it. Thanks.
Cheers for now. Bye.